I was born in India, and my mum brought me here when I was a baby. We lived in Bolton, in Greater Manchester. I lived there part of my childhood and moved down to London, so I'm really a Londoner now. I think I must have been in primary school, probably about 5-6 years old. But all my family are still in Bolton, so we come back every year.
Oh, right.
My dad's sisters are also, we're the only family that moved down to London. But I'm a full-time author now.
Okay.
My book was published 2 years ago with Penguin, and I'm writing a new book at the moment, and I also do lots of promotion as well. So I go into schools and talk about writing, what my book is about, which is forced marriage, and just try and inspire the students to, aspire. Talking about the work that I did in my previous career as well, which was working in the Houses of Parliament. I worked there for a long time, just under a decade. I worked for different MPs. I worked for a London MP called Stephen Timms. I worked for a while for Harriet Harman. And I was also a media officer for the Labour Party for a number of years when Gordon Brown was the Prime Minister. It was a childhood dream from when I was a little girl, so I was probably about 7 or 8 years old when I decided that I wanted to be a children's author. I loved reading, I loved writing stories, they were my favourite hobbies. But it took a while to get published. But because it was a favourite hobby, I always loved reading, always loved writing stories. It's something that I always kept up. And then my first, the book that got the publishing deal was Secrets of the Henna Girl, which is about forced marriage. Well, it was when I wasn't really aware of forced marriages before. It was just something that I thought happened in certain families in certain South Asian communities, and I wasn't very familiar with it because I didn't know anybody personally that had been through it. But when I was working in the Houses of Parliament, I met a campaign group of women who were really survivors of forced marriages, and they were campaigning for better protection for young people in the country because they'd been through it themselves, and they wanted to make sure that the police were better trained around the issue, the social workers, the teachers in schools. Some of them were campaigning for it to be made illegal, some of them just wanted better protection for young people. And that was sort of the first time I really came across it, and it was really listening to their stories about what they had been through. Very openly talked about being kidnapped, being taken abroad, being forced to marry, marital rape. But these were strong women that managed to, when they came back to the UK, to get divorced, rebuild their lives, and set up support groups and women's groups to make sure that it didn't happen to other young people. So it was really my interaction with them, listening to them. And I thought to myself, I could write a story about a young British girl, an Asian girl that this happens to, but I could make it a story about her, make it a more empowering story about, fair enough, in chapter 1 she begins this journey which is about being forced to marry by her parents, but really about how she manages to get herself out of that situation, and also examining some of the concepts that we have in the Asian culture, like honour. Where does it come from? Where does it stem from? What I'm doing are author visits. I talk about the journey to becoming an author. I talk about the process of writing, and of course we touch on the issue of forced marriage as well, because that's what the book is about. But my sessions really are about trying to inspire the pupils that you can go out and achieve anything you want. And really, my character, the way I've tried to portray her in the book is that she's a British person who's born and brought up here, been through the education system here, is like everybody else in the country, regardless of their ethnicity and race or religion, which is that, when you go through the system here, the British system of education, you are someone who aspires, who is ambitious, who has a sense of independence, and those things are absolutely fine, to have. So I focused on that, on my main character. I talk about the book, but really it's an author visit, and what I want is what I hope to achieve by the end of the session is that the school pupils will pick the book up and read it for the story that it is, rather than because they need to be made aware of forced marriages. Well, one of the responses that I was very, very pleased with sort of came from a lot of the reviewers of the book, which was that, and they were very sort of middle class, Middle England English reviewers. Much of what they had picked up on was through media headlines about Islam. Not really, probably didn't even have much interaction with Muslims, just read about them in the papers, whether they like this or they like that. So they probably had an assumption that, forced marriages happen because of the religion. And what my book shows from the start is it's not religion, it's not Islam, it's not any religion. Forced marriage is a form of bullying. It stems from patriarchal culture. It has nothing to do with religion, and actually some of the best characters in the book are the spiritual people. There's an imam in the book, there's a grandmother who's very spiritual, and they're the ones that are against the forced marriage because they're arguing from a religious point of view that you can't, in Islam you can't have forced marriages. And the book also mentions the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, saying the hadith that you have to get the consent of the virgin before you marry her. So they had picked up on that actually it's not their religion, it's just man-made culture, and it's just made during the bullying.
Important.
And that for me was an achievement, because
Definitely.
that's what I wanted to portray. So positive feedback from that point of view. No backlash against the book, because I don't attack the religion. I'm actually positive about the religion. And of course I'm a Muslim, and I would not want to put anything out there that would say anything derogatory about my own religion. Good feedback. It's won some awards. School pupils are voting for it as a favourite. It's been shortlisted for some children's book awards as well. So it's been positive. Well, it was really the reason I chose. I mean, I am really very interested in politics. I'm a political activist. I've been active in politics for a long time. And forced marriages is such a topical issue in this country. You can't pick up a newspaper without every couple of weeks seeing something about an Asian woman. And I wanted to write it, wanted my narrative to be that, fair enough, it happens in the community. It does happen, can't deny that. But there is a way out. You can empower our girls, you can challenge it. And more than anything, I think by writing this book, what it encourages is debate. And you can't have change in a society unless you have debate, unless people are talking about it. It's the debate that also led to the law to make forced marriages illegal. It's when people were speaking up, saying, I went through this, I don't want it to happen to anyone else. So it's really, it's a topical issue, it's an important issue, it needs to be challenged.
Marriages?
Well, I personally welcome it. I'm not sure how many prosecutions we'll have, because of course it's children going up against their parents. I'm not sure how confident these potential victims will be in their own parents going to jail. But the reason I support it is because it shows that as a society we condemn it, and that's the first step, because unless you have something made illegal to show that we as a society find this practice unacceptable, you can't really move on to the next step. It went on for years and years and years. South Asian, North African or Arab, but especially South Asian history, we've been here nearly for 5 decades. A few decades ago it went on in lots of families. There were a lot of victims, and there was no help for anyone because the police didn't know that, and there was a whole attitude in our society which was that, it's the Asian people, we mustn't interfere, and if that's how they want to treat their daughters, it's got nothing to do with us. That's had to change, because actually it's abuse. We don't accept paedophilia in our society. This is abuse as well, and you can't excuse it on the grounds that it's how Asian women are treated in their culture, and it's got nothing to do with us. No, actually, Asian women have equal rights in the country, and if they're being abused, then something needs to be done about it. I think I'm completely aware of the arguments. I spoke to a lot of women activists that are against it, and I totally understand their point of view as well. I do understand that there could be the danger of pushing it underground. But I think there's a big distance to travel before you get to the stage where prosecutions happen. I know some amazing women activists that help support groups, and the first instance is that the forced marriage orders that we have already in existence work really well, where if there is a potential victim, then forced marriage orders are released by a judge, and you cannot take that child abroad, and that child cannot be married in this country either. That's the first step. And it's only when they violated the forced marriage order, they still managed to take the child abroad or got that young person married here. It will take a long time to get to the stage where prosecutions have to happen. I think the emphasis needs to be on making sure that the government continues to fund these women support groups, these forced marriage support groups, that awareness is still made, and you know, that we continue with the advertising campaign against it as well. I don't think it's I wouldn't want it to be where the government has ticked a box and said that it's illegal and then just thought, right, that's it, our work is done. The work is not done. The work really is about making sure that at the community level support is given. I mean, I like historical fiction a lot. Very obsessed by that. I love history, and I love it even more when they turn it into fiction. Yeah, I don't really read a lot of romance.
Do you get time to read?
I do. Yeah, I always have a book on me. You know, any spare moment on the train, wherever. I mean, I always have a book, and that's just something I've had since I was a child. I don't really have a favourite. There are so many books. I mean, children's. I loved Roald Dahl, obviously. I loved Enid Blyton as well. And one of my favourite Enid Blyton series was The Mallory Towers, which is about a girl who goes to a boarding school. In terms of adult fiction, I don't really have a favourite. I'm currently obsessed with Game of Thrones.
Why?
Totally obsessed. If anybody asked me, you know, is there a book you wish you'd written? I wish I'd written Game of Thrones. Well, I am writing another book at the moment. It's nearly finished. I've kind of missed my deadline because I keep doing events and I should be at home writing. It's called Secrets of the Slum Girl, and it looks at acid violence, which is something that is quite, you know, an awful thing to happen to anyone, and is on the increase in certain parts of the world as another way to control and attack women, an easy way to attack women. So it looks at acid violence. It's a bit of a refugee story. It's half set in India, half set in the UK. And my characters aren't Muslim this time. I've made them Christian, but they're Indian Christian. But that's what the new book is about. I mean, I'm very, very interested in women's rights. And, you know, the way I see it is, you know, I'm a political activist, and what I write is a reflection of what I see. And my plots are driven by the change I would like to see in society. So, I mean, Secrets of the Henna Girl, I like to think of it as an empowering story. It has a happy ending. I'm not so sure how many happy endings there are in real life, but this is fiction, and I think, you know, fiction books are about trying to pave the way forward, about how things could be. I think the government has done as much as it can do, because all it can really do is make something, you know, use the law. It has also gone out, it's done its duty in terms of training police, social workers, the education system. You know, it's done a lot of work with the airports as well. I'm sure you heard last year where, you know, somebody who might be a potential victim, if they put a teaspoon or something in their underwear, the airport security scanners go off and airport officials have all been trained up. So they've done everything they can in terms of with the professionals. But really, I think now, this is a debate we need to have within the community. It's the patriarchy we need to challenge. And I completely understand where in my book it makes it clear that the reason parents force their children to marry is because they feel obligated to other members of their family. So if your Dayaji says, you know, give your daughter, there's almost like a cultural obligation to say, okay, you've asked, so I have to give, without taking that independent individual's feelings into it. So I think as a society, as a community, you know, we need to have that debate, that actually your daughters are not your possessions, you know, which is something that is there in the patriarchal culture, that women are seen as the possessions of your father, your husband, your brother, and in old age your son. That needs to be challenged. I don't doubt that they love their children. I think they love their children like every other parent does. But I think that the obligations to extended members of their family overrides the love that they have for their children. Because that's why you do it. Why you put the happiness, why you would risk the happiness of your child, because, you know, you feel obligated to other members of your family. It's just something that's been happening for generations. Now we know why it happened for generations, why, you know, we had cousin marriages, for example, because a lot of forced marriages are cousin marriages, because they wanted to keep land in the family. You know, South Asia is mainly an agricultural based economy for generations, still is. You know, the cities are still a minority compared to the people that live in the rural areas. So, you know, if your daughter got married, outside the family, then your land would be divided because she would inherit. Under Islam, daughters inherit. So if you kept the land in the you married your cousin, your land remained. And I can understand that they did that generations ago, and women didn't really have a voice then. But things are different now. And I'm sure it's still very much the case in Pakistan, where you have forced marriages and the girls have no power to object. But we're talking about British girls. We live in this country, and the girls have gone through the education system here, and boys. And here, we're taught, every single one of us has a sense of independence, sense of aspiration, sense of ambition, but what we can achieve for ourselves in our own lives. And to think, it's a culture clash, because you've got British children clashing with, another generation that still want to do something, that is basically transferred from another country to here. So I don't doubt the parents' love at all, but I think their obligations to extended members affects it. And of course, that whole concept of what they perceive to be honour, which I think is just wrong, because in the South Asian culture, honour is measured by the way the women in the family behave, which my book looks at. Actually, honour should be, if you are an honourable person, it should be because of your own deeds, your own principles, not because of the way your female family members are. And that's something that exists as it does, and that is something that needs to be challenged, I think. I think an honourable person is honourable because they're a good person, they have principles, they've done honourable things, they're good, but you're not honourable because your wife obeys you. That's not honour. And that's a debate we need to have.
Yeah.
But it gets complicated.
Yeah.